Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video, we're finally going to be getting to our massive Delirium orb test. We've tested every semi-viable or decent Delirium orb out there, with like the exception of stuff like Armorers, and we've got the exact loot tables of almost all of them. We've run multiple of each, and we have a ton of drops for you. In addition to that, we've also been able to calculate which is going to be the most profitable now and all the time in the future. And you guys at the end of this video are going to be able to calculate that for yourself at whatever point you are in the league, and then all the way up until they change Delirium orbs in the future, which is going to be insane information indeed. So let's get straight into it and let's start talking about it. So with all of these tests, with the exception of fragments, I have run these all on tier 14 beaches. We've consistently got 11 rewards on average in each of these tests, and we've tried to do at least 5 of each map, with some of them going all the way up to 20, and then we've averaged those results out. Now 5 is an absolute ton of loot tiles. That's 5 times 11 times 5 again. So there is absolutely a ton of sample size here to at least understand the drop table in these high-end Delirium maps. So we picked tier 14 because that's the breakpoint to get into the end game kind of watchstone zone. The reason we went for tier 16 on fragments is because fragments from Guardians and Elder presumably could only start dropping at tier 15 or 16 plus, and we wanted to see how often those would drop. So we went with tier 16 for that one. So with all that said, we've got a kind of ground rules for our test here. It's all consistent apart from that fragment one. Let's get into the results. So here we go. We've got an absolute beast of a spreadsheet here that we've painstakingly gathered the data for on stream over on Twitch. And oh man, is it a crazy kind of result here. I didn't expect any of this, and it's not exactly what you would think in terms of drops or which one's the most profitable. So let's dive straight into it. So skittering, we'll start off with the drop tables. For skittering, you can expect to get rusted, polished, and gilded scarabs. You'll get more gilded scarabs from what I understand the higher tier you go up. Of course, we've talked about scarabs before, but that is a pretty good rule of thumb. So if you're doing like low tier white maps or yellow maps, don't expect to get many or at all any kind of gilded scarabs in those maps. You need to go to the higher tiers to get more scarabs. However, once you hit the tier 14 point, I think that's a pretty sweet spot to kind of sit, make sure that it's nice and chill. If you can do the tier 16s, why not? But I don't think there's any problem with doing tier 14 for profitability. So moving on, Blighted Maps. This is another one we've discussed. The Blighted Orbs. So you'll get oils. Golden oils aren't uncommon. Opalescent oils, all that kind of stuff like that. You'll also get Blighted Maps of the tier you're running. So if you're doing 14, you'll get 14s. If you're doing 16s, you'll get 16s, as well as one tier lower. And it's going to be a 50-50 split. So if you're doing 16s, you'll get half 15s and half 16s. So you can kind of factor that into your profit. Next up, Obscured. So Obscured, you're going to get splinters, and you're going to get tons of them. They drop in like stacks of like 10 to 15. You're going to get breach stones, like full breach stones. That means Triula breach stones as well. You're going to get full charged breach stones, enriched, and pure stones as well as some breach lord blessings. So you're going to get a really good mix of pretty much everything that the league has to offer here, with the exception of the uniques. I haven't had a single unique drop in Blighted or Obscured, so that is something to note. Diviners. So I haven't run as many of these as I have others, but primarily what you're going to get here is a lot of stacked decks. I think you can probably average around 40 per map, and how good this will be depending on the league. Of course, if stacked decks are really cheap like they are this league, it won't be very good, but if they're more expensive, it might be quite good. In addition to that, you'll also get random divination cards. The reason it's in red here, which I'll talk about at the end of this kind of drop table recap, is that it is highly volatile. The only consistent thing you have is the stacked decks, and if they're not running a high price, then you're basically going to make like a really risky amount of money. You'll either get a Doctor or a House of Mirrors, or you'll get nothing. Next, Foreboding. So foreboding is Harbinger, so you can get full Ancient Orbs, full Harby Orbs, and a ton of full Horizon Orbs. You'll also get all the Harbinger League shards, so you'll get Annulment shards, Exalt shards, potentially a Mirror shard, although those are so rare. We didn't get one in our test. And you'll also get tier appropriate beachheads. So we were getting red beachheads in red maps. I'm assuming if you do yellows, you'll get yellows, and whites if you do whites. You can't get the new T16 infused beachhead to my knowledge. I've never had one of those drop, and I've never heard of one dropping either. Timeless. So you'll get emblem splinters. You won't get as many as you did in Breach. So you'll get about 5 to 10 splinters in a stack, which isn't too bad, but it's definitely not insane. And you'll also get pretty much any incubator on the drop table. It's all fair game, and you'll get quite a lot of them as well. However, they are weighted. When we get to the actual breakdown of loot, you'll see that. Next, Fossilized. So Fossilized is a bit of a funny one. We ran 5 of these overall, which again is actually a pretty big sample size when you consider how many loot tiles we're getting through here. So it's 5 times 11 times 5 again. Now we got a ton of fossils. We got every single fossil on the drop table and got no tier 1 fossils, none at all. So that means one of two things. Either they're incredibly rare, like we're talking super ultra rare, or they do not drop. Now, I'm probably going to go with they do not drop because Chris and a bunch of other GGG guys have said that they don't want to undermine delvers and the one thing that they have going for them and how they make money. So it makes sense that tier 1 fossils would not drop from this source because you would absolutely ruin the market and potentially go infinite on fractured fossils if that was the case. Now, what it does drop is prime resonators, both alchemic and chaotic. So I can confirm that, but yeah, not sure on those tier 1 fossils. Probably not in my opinion. Next up, Amorphous. This drops pure catalysts. It drops 5 stacks. So if you get 5 tiles, you get 5 stacks of catalysts, and it drops in multiples. So, you can get 5 fertile catalysts, stuff like that. So it's pretty strong. It's not too bad at all. Next, Fragmented. This is the one we ran on T16, and it is going to be Sack Frags, Mortal Frags, Guardian Frags, and Elder Fragments. I heard a rumor that you could get Uber Elder Fragments. We didn't get any of them in our test, and we were running on T16 as well. So no information there about that, but I'm going to probably say similar to fossils that they probably don't drop, or if they do, they're extremely rare, and they're not going to make much of a difference on how much you'll earn. Unless we got super unlucky and didn't get any because of that. Next, Essence. So you're going to get all Shrieking and below Essence. So that's the second highest tier Essence, but we got 0 Deafening in all of our tests. Granted, we weren't on T16, that may have an impact, but no Deafening Essences at all was quite a surprise. We did, however, get a lot of Remnants of Corruption as well as Corrupted Essences, so you'll get those. Next, Prophecy. We did test a couple of these. You pretty much just get random prophecies. It's exactly what you'd think, and you get 1 per loot tile. So basically every explosion, you'll get 5. So you can end up with 55 prophecies per map. Is that good? No, that's not good at all, because you can just use 55 silver coins and get the same effect pretty much. So it's not very good. It's not itemized from what I can understand, and it is completely random. So now that we understand that, I really kind of want to review the options we have here, because there are some nuances which may make you choose one over the other. So we'll start with skittering. Skittering is potentially one of the best ones, the most consistent ones, but you have to consider that you have to loot all of the scarabs you're getting, and you're getting hundreds of them. Hundreds of them indeed. You're going to get 100 plus per map, and this makes it a bit of a risky strategy. If you're not confident doing fraction maps, you're actually going to need 3 to 4 portals just to loot all of the loot in the map. So if you end up ripping a couple portals to beyond monsters or whatever's in the map, it can get quite dangerous. So you do need to consider that when you're doing skittering. Similarly, for Timeless, which is Legion, you also need to consider that because you get a similar amount of incubators as you do scarabs, so that is also going to be a concern. Also following suit is Fragmented here. That is also along the same lines. You're going to get an absolute ton of fragments, 3 or 4 portals worth. Dying will mean you lose loot, which is definitely not a good thing. So definitely consider those things before you pick on one of those. Next, I want to kind of highlight a couple here. So Diviners as well as Portentous is kind of like a tough one. These are going to be extremely risky. You're either going to win big or you're going to lose big. In my two examples, like testing these, like, you know, this league, I've lost big twice. So dividends is a little bit better because you can kind of like make up some of the loss with stacked decks, but they're highly volatile. And because of that, I will never be running these unless stacked decks literally make up over half the fractured fossil price. But to be honest, there's just so many better options. I don't think I would ever run these two. So that is that. So a few other ones I just want to quickly talk about here. Catalysts, super easy to pick up and loot quick. As well as fossilized, you can stack the fossils quite nicely. It's not too bad to loot them. You don't get too many of them. I know that sounds kind of weird, but there's not an overabundance of them, so you can loot pretty fast. As well as foreboding, because a lot of the drops are low value, and then there's a few high value ones like full ancient orbs. It's actually pretty quick to loot that as well. So yeah, it's pretty good. So yeah, there's going to be some really extreme loot heavy ones, which will slow you down, give you risk factors. And there's going to be some, like, you know, not too heavy ones on the loot, like, you know, fossilized Amorphous, which is Metamorph. And then there's going to be some in the kind of middle, which is like Blighted, Obscured, stuff like that, which is pretty quick to loot, but it's not like, it's more loot than Amorphous, but it's also not going to take up too many portals, if you kind of get what I mean. So yeah, you're going to kind of pick your battles here and make sure you're tackling what you want to tackle here. So I do quickly want to go into some of how the calculations work here, because there is some stuff to consider. So pretty much for a few of these, it's exactly what it says on the tin, and I'll go over that now. But some of them I have been kind of like a little bit aggressive with how I've included things, specifically in stuff like Legion and Essence. I have trimmed the fat so that, like, you know, stuff that people probably wouldn't sell, but you could kind of pad the numbers with, I have removed. So let's quickly start with Obscured. I was kind of surprised. I have sold everything from my Obscured runs. I did 20, all of it sold, and it actually sold at higher prices than I have listed here, but this is a conservative number. So these are actually all very, very easy to sell, so that's all good. It's exactly what it says on the tin. Everything will be included. Blighted, similar deal. Fragmented isn't too hard to sell everything either. It might be a bit tedious to sell the sacrificial fragments, but it's all good. You can sell them if you want to. Fossilized, similar deal. You probably can get higher prices if you sell bulk than what's listed here, but for the consistency of the test, this is all as it is. Nothing won't sell though, if you know what I mean. Same with skittering, same with scarabs here. You can see here I've listed a few as 0. That is because I personally wouldn't sell anything worse than 0.5 chaos each. And honestly, I think even 1 chaos each is pushing it. That's sack frag territory, and a lot of people will be shying away from that. So you can kind of trim a few more out of scarabs. And you can even hide them on your filter if you would like, which might ease some of the burden in mapping. But yeah, a lot of these aren't worth anything. Stuff like Breach, Rusted Breach is worth half a chaos. So I've trimmed that out of the final total to kind of give a more realistic number of how much you might expect to earn. Foreboding, everything sells there. Timeless. This is one where I was very aggressive with trimming stuff out. So all the Celestial stuff I cut. A lot of the Cartographer, Primal, Singular, Abyssal, all that stuff got chopped. Now, if you're doing 4 white Watchstone farming with your kind of like T19 farming of your Delirium, some of this stuff actually can sell for quite a high price, you know, 2 or 3C per Celestial. And as you can see here, I got 16, 18 of those, you know. You can get 86 Abyssal Incubators, which gives you 86 Stygians and Jewels, which could sell as well for a little bit of money. That's another chunk of change there. But yeah, you do also have to consider that. But again, for this test, to keep it consistent, to keep it fair, we've chopped those out because I personally wouldn't sell them, and I don't think they will sell. Amorphous, everything sells very easily there. So Whispering, which is Essence, we have a ton of different essences here. You can see kind of like the massive like kind of curve here that makes it with the Essence tab. You can see that there as well. So with this one, I have listed everything here, but for the purpose of pricing and the test, I've actually combined everything up and into deafening, and then I've included shrieking that as a decimal. But anything which didn't combine up to shrieking / deafening got chopped. We've also got the corrupted essences here, so I think I had a pretty fair assessment of essence. I don't think anyone's going to be selling, you know, screaming essences on a piece by piece basis. It's too tedious, and yeah, just combining it up makes the most sense. So yeah, with all that said, let's finally get into which one of these is most profitable and do an overall assessment on Delirium orbs and which ones you guys should think about running right now. So we'll Control Z, and here are the results. So Skittering. Skittering is actually pretty damn profitable. You see I've got it listed here in green. You make up 78% of your fractured fossil price on average right now if you sell things conservatively, which is pretty good. That definitely puts it in a pretty good range. Now you do have to tackle that massive loot, however, but you can start to filter them out if you're happy to take a bit of a hit on how much you can earn back. It's probably the most consistent one on this list and the one you can consistently sell throughout the whole league long as well. So definitely a very good option. I don't think you can really lose at any point with skittering. Next, Blighted. So Blighted isn't looking too hot here, but you do make up half of your cost of your map on average, even with non-bulk PoE Ninja prices, which isn't too bad at all, to be honest. Now, one thing to consider here, though, is that Blighted T16 maps and 15 maps are worth quite a little bit more. You know, they bump up, you know, like 25 to 30 to 40%, which can really jack up that percentage price. You can probably push it up to 65-ish% of your money back with Blighted. And it's very easy to loot Blighted. You just have to pick up the maps and the gold oils and stuff like that. It's probably the easiest one to loot overall. So, Obscured, 113% return on your money right now. That is completely ridiculous. You make so much more money than you actually invest right now at the current fractured fossil price. It's completely absurd. I can't believe that you make more money just from the league mechanics. So all those exalts that you drop, you know, the calamitous visions, you know, if you get a headhunter, any of that is gravy. And that's at tier 14. I'm not sure if it scales very hard into tier 16, but that is completely silly. I can't believe that you make that much money back. I had a hunch that Breach was the best when I was doing it and I sold everything, but that is quite shocking that it is so high indeed. So absolutely insane. Breach is probably the front runner. It's not too bad to loot either because the splinters do stack. You're just going to end up with breach stones in your inventory. Next, Foreboding. So Foreboding is actually a pretty interesting one. It runs at 68% of the cost right now, but I think it's pretty good actually. You get beachheads, which are pretty good to sell in bulk. You can probably fetch a little bit more if you have bulk beachheads. And also, similarly for Ancient Orbs, I think you could make quite a bit more money if you sold those in bulk as well. And it's a pretty consistent one all league long as well. People are always going to want Ancient Orbs because they give Headhunter. People are always going to want Exalted Orbs because, you know, they're pure currency. And, you know, Annulment Orbs aren't too bad. I don't think they're going to go any lower than they are now. And stuff like Beachheads, I don't see going down in price either because red Beachheads feed the machine that is the infused Beachhead generating kind of like system. So not too bad, definitely pretty interesting there. Foreboding could be even better than this if you can get a Mirror Shard, which we didn't get. If we did get one, I imagine this would be the best one, but we didn't, but there's the chance to get it. It's kind of like a giga overpowered chance to get, you know, like something insane. So definitely pretty interesting with Foreboding. Next, Timeless. It's pretty close to Breach in how much it returns, and we also trimmed out a massive amount of the incubators, which you could also filter off to kind of, you know, take some of that burden back off you. But very profitable. You get pure emblems, which are super awesome, and you also get a lot of incubators, which are easy to sell in bulk, which is super duper good as well. Moving on, Fossilized. So the fact that it doesn't drop tier 1 fossils and the fact that we're in a crafting league where you don't really need to use fossils makes fossils not very good this league, which is a bit unfortunate, but next league, if we're still kind of going with what we've got now, it will be pretty insane indeed, which is super duper crazy in my opinion. So really cool. Next, Amorphous. So it's not the highest percentage by any means, but it is super easy to sell all of these catalysts. In addition to that, you're also going to get a bunch of low tier catalysts, which you can use the garden to convert up into high tier catalysts if you're playing with the harvest mechanic. So pretty good. The last two here, Fragmented, you get the worst of pretty much everything. You get the worst of skittering, and you also get the worst of selling everything, and you don't get a very good return. So I can't recommend that one really at all. Now, we don't have a massive sample size of these, but I don't think that it does drop Uber Elder Fragments or anything like that. It seems quite unlikely indeed. Lastly, Whispering, the poorest on this list, and there is no potential really for any big drops here, so it really is just a complete write-off. You don't see Diviners or Prophecy on this list because, in my opinion, they are quite volatile. In addition to that, I think Currency is also a little bit of a weird one. I don't think that there's really any way you could get more than 1 or 2x back off of it, that seems kind of, you know, a stretch. And because of you're basically running Nemesis 3 in the map, it does also seem like a stretch to think that you can make up the rest of that from other things. I think you're always going to be in a better position running one of the league mechanic ones, like, you know, Breach, you know, any of these versus Currency, unless you're doing low tier maps. So that's my kind of assessment on it. Now, everyone should definitely keep in mind though, if this video goes live and everyone decides to do one or like the highest one, which is like Breach, that will affect the market overall because you get so many Breach stones, you know, you get so many like splinters, blessings, all that kind of stuff like that. If there's just suddenly 20 times the amount on the market, that will push prices down. So when you're choosing your Delirium orb, make sure you pick what's best for you at the time. Do the calculations yourself. You can easily just rip my spreadsheet here out of this like document and fill in the prices again yourself. It's pretty easy, takes about 10 minutes. And then you can go on your happy way, make your map and make an absolute killing, knowing that you're going to make a lot of currency based on my drops. So use my information to your advantage and go out there and make a ton of currency. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. It took quite a while to make. If you enjoy this kind of content, definitely come down and check out the stream. We filmed pretty much most of this live, which was an absolute blast. We took input from chat on what we should try, and there will be plenty more experiment and science content to come. So make sure you tune into the channel in the future. So all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.